Let me have a quick look. The link seems to be reactivating. Yes, it's live. There's a 30-second lag, but it's live.
Okay, great.
Sorry about that.
Right, thanks, Pavan. Michaela, have you joined us?
Yeah, it's looking like I'm still here.
Okay,
I'm not
lovely.
sure if Neil's still on there yet.
Yeah, let's wait for Neil.
Yep, I'm there.
Great. Great. So welcome and thanks again for the presentations. Now what we'd like to do is just set 3 questions to continue with the debate. So the first question we have is, do you believe industry has the digital skills it will need for the future, and what are the gaps? So what could you please let us know your views on this? Maybe Neil, if you'd like, we could start with you.
Yeah, so, you know, we don't know what we don't know with some of this. And I think this is why, you know, we've taken the approach that we've got to look out at academia in particular, is that, you know, as I said in my example, the case is we don't know what to do with some of these skills. So the instance that we trained, we don't have a job description for a data analyst. We don't have a specific job they're going to do in a shipyard environment. So it's very much to say, let's train and give the people those skills and then see how they, once they've acquired those skills, apply them into our business. So it's a little bit of a leap of faith to some degree, which, you know, takes the business case some getting used to. But it's identifying that we do need these things, but we don't know what they are. And, you know, some of us, you know, don't even know what that does. So it's very difficult to put business cases around data stuff that you can't see or touch. And what benefits come from building up those skills over a period of time. So we're very used to saying, right, here's a machine. You're taught how to use that machine. You press the button, turn it on. These are the factors. These are all of this. But then when you start saying, well, but you're going to get this data back that you need to react to. And this is how you're going to interface with that and be better, and how you're improving it. You're part of the solution to make things better. I think we don't have that sort of those skills yet in the industry.
That's great. Thank you, Neil. Michaela, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a really interesting point, actually, and a particular around the data sciences, data analytics as a particular subject. When we're bringing people into the business, it's quite complex and hard to keep them thinking that they're providing meaningful value. It is industry ready when these people reside in the business. Is academia ready for what that means for a learner coming out of formal learning into a business to a role that isn't defined? And how does that affect the people around them? There's so many factors that we found, and we had a graduate in the business, I'd say a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure that we were ready for him at that point. But now there's some real exciting work that they're getting to get involved in. It's just that patience. And how can we learn from almost that as an example as we progress into other not so well defined roles, and make sure that we're ready, keeping them engaged, meaningful work, and just preparing the ground, I think is a good consideration to think of.
That's great, thank you. And do you feel that the demands are evolving, and as a result, the skills that are needed around digital are also changing over time? Do you have any examples for that?
I do from a training perspective. I think I alluded to it in the start of my presentation. With the varying range of experience that we've got in our organisation, how do we keep those in the later parts of their careers engaged and abreast of these changes, and almost give them a pathway to upskill? Because some of these things they literally are things almost like black magic for them. You know, the things that they never thought would happen are now starting to happen. and it doesn't mean that they don't want to learn. You've just got to provide almost, and they might not pick up some of the things because they haven't been immersed in this digital era as much as before, but their experience and their knowledge is hugely relevant. Different things about the materials and all those different things and bits and pieces that we consider, and yeah, I think that's my perspective, I think, on it.
That's great. Thank you, Michaela. Neil, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, and we've looked at sort of things like reverse mentoring, you know, trying to get some of the people, you know, which is why we did that baseline survey of our people, to take the people that have the skills and get them working alongside, because everyone has value. And as I say, with the assets we look after, there's a huge range in those. So we need all of those skills for what we do for our clients. So it's how you basically don't treat everybody as the same here. Everybody is at varying levels. And I think what technology does in particular is allow us to tailor that training and the solution we give the people for the technology, the right thing. So, you know, we quite often sort of talk about, we'll go digital, okay, we'll give everyone an iPad. Okay, that's not necessarily the right solution. You know, 4 people doing the same job could have 4 different technology solutions that allow them to be the best they possibly can be. And I think that's what we're really trying to get out here, is how do we make each person the best they can be, and what tools and support we need to give them to get there. And everybody's going to be different in what they need for that. So that tailoring and individual, and I think, again, if we look at, you know, lockdown, COVID, people working from home, one of the big benefits of that is you treat everybody more as an individual, you know, because they are an office of one now. So I think it's allowed us to really, you know, hone down, talk to people and understand that, and work out what they need in that remote environment to support people that still have to be in the facilities working, etc., and make sure that they're working still as a team.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Neil. Just to continue the discussion, does industry need to work more closely with academia? And how can academia benefit from working with industry? From your view, what's your views then around this?
On this, John, where we were is some of the things that we don't know what we have yet, and what we found very interesting is to use academia. So some of the very first engagements we had with academia was about showing us the art of the possible. So whether that's getting someone in to say, here's augmented reality and here's what it could look like, and just hold a tablet up to show the yard as it could be in 10 years time, and get people to touch it, feel it for a little bit, and then for them to take those ideas away was fantastic. We did similar with data science. The blockchain project that we did with yourself in Cranfield was around, you know, let's have a look at it and see if it is applicable to our business. Because the worst thing I think we can do as industry sometimes is we jump on what the latest topic is and we go off down that, but it doesn't add value back to the business. And so, but we need the ability to look at it and see what that is, both what's here now, what's in the future, and how we get there. But I think also academia needs to listen to us sometimes to say, look, we've got a project, we need to deliver this. We haven't got time to go through all these other things. What can you give us now to assist, actually implement it, get it working, and allow us to deliver the project? And it's a balancing act between those. So there's a little bit of tension between the immediate deliveries and the mid and long term stuff that needs to come through as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Neil. Michaela, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think Neil's covered off the research side of things. That's really important to us. We, like I said, he said we live in the now as well quite a lot. We problem solving and doing all the other things. So that research is really important. But the other side of things is that contextualization. I think we can, by having almost placements, university students coming back to industry, spending time on the shop floor, working with the engineers, I think it gives that rounded thinking to almost like polish off research as well sometimes, or just give those realistic factors and challenges. And I think that's a real strength to that almost like dual partnership, people going in both directions and utilising the research and information from both sides.
I guess I'd just like to add the perspective from academia here, in that many universities, they're not just doing research around TRL 1, 2, 3, they're also going beyond and looking at TRL 4 to 6 or 7 as well. So working with industry in that kind of environment really does add value. It does make it a lot more focused on implementation and adoption. So I think there's a big kind of role in terms of industry and academic collaboration from that angle. But I think from a skills side, it's really powerful to know that the skills that are provided to the students will actually be useful when they actually go and start working. So very early on, to define courses, define the kind of content and the method of delivery to students is critical. And I think we've really got to build that kind of connection and collaboration with the intention of developing skills. So for me, I think the academia industry collaboration should be in terms of multiple aspects. So like the examples you were giving, both of you were giving around new technology development, I think all of those examples should also feed into the skills development. So it shouldn't just stay in the kind of research area. It should also be embedded in the kind of skills that are going to be needed in the future. So it's kind of a continuous cycle in terms of the research and the skills development. I think they go hand in hand together in that kind of process. So thank you for that. I'd just like to continue the questions. So the next question is really about what challenges does UK industry face if it doesn't get the right skills? And will we all be working in a virtual environment in the future? Not sure which of you would like to start. Michaela?
Yeah, I think the first part is got to be right up Neil Street, because that's I think what, you know, part of that digital academy and everything else that we're trying to achieve with that real mix. So that the consortium involved in that is there for a reason. And probably Neil, if you feel comfortable taking the first part around the skills gap, and I can do the virtual learning environment and the realities of that.
Yeah, so you know that whole digital skills is, we're very mindful that we have an existing workforce. We're very loyal to our workforce. We don't want them to become outskilled as well. So this whole one of how we train our existing workforce to create the new skills that they need to apply in is really fundamental. Then how we seed in new people into the business with different skills and different viewpoints as well is really interesting. So we're looking at getting that balance right, but you know, there is a gap there. You know, there's a gap in terms of, at the moment, we spent a lot of money on, say, equipment that may be 15 years old. It's still perfectly okay, but it's analog. How do we make that a digital asset so we can get the benefits of it? How do we run systems in parallel at the moment from analog and digital assets that we own on our own facilities, for instance, let alone with our clients as well? So we're always going to have this gap and this lag because of the length of the projects we have. We've also got, I think you touched on it with academia there and the skills, to show people the real life world we live in, where we don't have connectivity for everything. We don't have Wi-Fi everywhere. You know, we don't have 5G networks. We've got security constraints because of the type of assets we deal with. You know, so we have to understand that we can't just go along, download an app and away we go. There's a whole host of other things that need to happen. So we've got one side saying, this is easy, download this, do this, it's great, it's fantastic. We're going, well, we can't do that. We need to make sure it goes through an accreditation system to be safe as well. And that takes time. And sometimes to be able to test and apply those as well. So we're looking at things like innovation labs, where we can take it off our network and allow people to come in and play with things. And we want our people to generate the solutions, because they are the ones that sit at the call face doing the work, and they're the ones that have the problems. So if we just give them a tablet and they go, well, it just does exactly the same as what I had, but now I break it or I spill all over it or something like this, it's a problem. So how do we listen to them and say, okay, it might be Google goggles, it might be this, etc. So we don't know where that sits. Also, there's the emerging, as big data becomes more and more prevalent, and I think Michaela, touched on that, is what do we do with that data? We generate an awful lot of data, but we don't really have the understanding, the skills with embedded in our business that everybody understands the importance of that data, and data as an asset as well. So it's a lot of things about how we do that. And at the moment, in terms of the skills developing there, are tremendous in our business at present. Also, the way sensor data and information is coming back from the assets we manage as well, that's changing dramatically as well, and coming back in many more forms, some of it live, some of it not live. But how do we get that to do like the easy work, so our people can focus on the really hard, nutty problems that your AI machine learning still can't deal with, your system of systems approach that you have as well. So understanding where we still need people to make decisions against where we need the machines and the data to make decisions as well is a really interesting gap for us at present.
That's great. Thank you, Neil. Michaela, would you like to add any further?
I forgot I was speaking then, Neil. I was so interested in what you were saying. Yeah, I think I just second that. When we look at digital twin technologies, there's becoming almost like a clear gap, isn't there, between what we absolutely need people to do and what data informs us about and how we do things differently. And utilising data science to make our engineering science better, and therefore our people and how they interact with that. I think is a real key thought, and to bring back in industry and academia again, I think it's really important that we have forums like this, but other things as well, where we can keep engaging on what we think are the challenges, what do we think are the skills that we need for the future, but not just on the core engineering skills, but it's about the understanding and appreciation of all those wraparound things like the data side of things, and how that changes the way that we operate. I think that real engagement between us is really key to make sure that we're thinking of all those things from the shop floor all the way through to the different factors that come into making engineering happen.
That's great. So I guess as the next sort of topic, I'd just like to touch on what will it look like in, say, 5 to 10 years? How can we project this kind of skills, and how we're going to be maybe upskilling people? Any views on this, please?
I think perhaps watch a film from about 10, 20 years ago, because they keep coming to reality, don't they? So that's my answer. Watch a film. But crikey, yeah. What will it look like? It's really hard to imagine, isn't it? When we go from things like the neurosciences and things like that, and people wanting to put chips in our brains to learn things and operate and do different bits and pieces, that's already moved from like 2060 to 2050 to 2040. And academia is telling us, and other people, that it could be even sooner than that, and that's a real game changer, just in the change of everything. Those types of technologies, I don't know, I would have to have a serious think, because that if somebody might play this back in 5 to 10 years and say she was totally wrong, we're light years ahead of that. But crikey, is it a place where we're virtually doing things and tasks? Is it that the data's taken over? Is it that we've got implants into our minds? I don't know, but it's exciting, hey?
Definitely, absolutely. Neil, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. We do quite a bit of looking what's sort of coming over the horizon at us effectively. So, in a practical sense, we look at it, say, welders of the future. The welders of the future will never actually touch the welding rods. They'll be programming a machine to act that, taking data back from that and optimizing it as it goes. We're still going to need the people, but they're going to need different skills to deliver what they do in that. And I think that's a really, really important thing that we're quite keen on is tech, getting rid of and automation and everything. So it's all about how we do our job better, safer in particular. So when we look at robotics, ROVs for inspection, etc., which we're already using, it's so we don't have to put people in confined spaces. So safety is much better from that point of view. But at the same point, I think there's going to be that view in the end that we still need the human to check things at the end and sign it off to do that. I think we're still a long way away from allowing it to go through and just from that point of view. It will give us data to allow decisions to be made, and I think that's a good thing, because it's not always, it's flawed at the moment. When we look at inspection data, for instance, understanding we're looking at exactly the same thing in exactly the same way still isn't there because we don't have the history built up, and that could take time to build up when we get the confidence. So it's all about trust. GPS, was all, when it first came out, nobody trusted it because it would send you down blind alleyways, have no roads on it, etc. But as it's got that data behind it, and enough data behind it, we trust it now. How many times now do we just go off and then we lose signal and go, I don't know where I'm going. I haven't got a map in the car. Happened to me the other day. Didn't have a physical map in the car. I always have one, but didn't have one. Finally took one out. So we build that trust up in that. And I think that's where we are. I think the technology will be ahead of the human trust in that technology. And I think that's the sort of thing that's going to, be the vanguard. And that's where we need academia in particular to be leading with that stuff out there, first off, in a nice, safe environment before we start bringing it back into other environments.
Push us out of our comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I do think you're right. It's taken, when you think of decisions in particular, it allows us to use our experience, use our gut instinct, but back it up with evidentiary data. And I think that's a real promising thing when we look at, like you said, Neil, those real high risk areas, to just make us better. And I think that's a really important point that you've raised there.
Yeah, I mean, from Cranfield's perspective, I guess there's two examples I'd like to give. And one is a new project we're starting with DSTL, which is looking at using robots to do repair and actually controlling robots with virtual reality remotely. And for me, that just changes the landscape for what does a maintenance engineer or repair engineer look like. It just highlights that we may actually remotely manage these kind of things. And another example I have is in terms of the MSc that we run, the Through Life System Sustainment. Before the lockdown, we were running this as a face-to-face program, and we had to convert that to an online delivery. And I think the kind of experience the students have been having is very much around transitioning to a virtual networking, virtual collaboration environment. And yes, it did take some time for many to get used to it, but I think this kind of environment is going to become more and more popular and common. So I think the future skills development will be quite diverse, involve lots of different mechanisms, approaches to reach the students. So I think it's very exciting times, as you've all mentioned. So I think just to continue this debate, what we'd like to now do is just maybe ask just your final comments from Neil and Michaela in terms of, is there a silver bullet? Is there, if there is, what does that look like? And what needs to change? Any sort of final comments as we close this debate?
So I'll go first if you want, Michaela. I think one of the things is to really start seeing data as an asset. Both your data in the business and the business out. So that whole understanding what a data culture looks like, I think is really important for businesses to be able to embrace technology going forward, and see how that means. A number of times you look at data and you go, it's wrong. It's not the data's fault, it's how it's structured and stuff. So that whole data culture piece is really making a change in those sorts of skills. I think it's the one of not being afraid to try things as well as we move forward, to get out there, try new technologies, and if it's good for people. So, your example about VR feeding it's the way people interact with technology. You know, so that human machine or digital interface is really, really important. You know, we're learning so much through this. Just having this conference like this now, completely different, feels a bit weird. But it's not that different, but it still needs the same people running around in the background to make sure our cameras are on and stuff and things like that. So it's great to see that we still need that from this morning. But this will just get better and better and be more natural as well. So I think that sort of whole data culture piece and that whole, you know, not being afraid to try new technology and apply it into the business, I think is really key. And I think then we'll start seeing real advantages build up. And I think it needs sort of leaders to have that sort of bigger picture to say, if we're doing these small things at the bottom, there's a point where the critical mass of them add real value to the business. Instead of seeing them as individual little projects, because on their own, they don't really do much, but bring them all together, they have great impact on the business.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Neil. Michaela, would you like to add anything?
Yes, similar theme. One is I think we have got to move from being reactive, exploring more in R&D, and then also looking at how we learn from significant things that happen, i.e. we've responded because there's been a COVID, there's been a pandemic, and we've had to really push forward with advancements. But if we look at patterns over time, we learn quite a lot from real challenging experiences where we have to think outside the box. Take the medical field, for example. It took years and years for providing medicine in a conflict environment in war zones. For those different factors, they actually came up with some real outside the box thinking approaches, which have now slowly trickled into kind of business as usual medicine. And we've got to be able to respond quicker than that. So let's not be reactive and push things forward when something happens that's significant. Let's be one step ahead and have these things into mainstream engineering quicker. And the other thing is I think communicate, collaborate with industry. Don't do things in isolation. Talk with the people that are on the ground that have to. Those are the ones that have to upskill. And don't just focus on the engineering side of things. There's a lot of thoughts and feelings and emotion that people go through when they know that there's a change on the horizon. And I think if we start with people first, we'll always get it right, because they're the people that will be doing whatever it is that we're asking them to do. And yeah, the quicker we think about that side of things, we'll progress faster, I think.
That's great. We're also planning to do a poll as part of this session. So I'm just going to share my screen so that people can answer, hopefully, a question that we've posted. So I'm just going to share my screen. And in parallel, what I want to do now is there's a couple of questions that, so to the audience, if you could just use that QR code to link to a Mentimeter poll. And what we'd like to do is just collate some information about whether, and this is for the UK-based partners, is the UK industry ready for a digital skills transformation? So we're asking a question there. If you could please answer that, that would be great. In parallel, though, there's a couple of questions in the audience that I'd like to ask Neil and Michaela. So first question is, what do you think would be the main factors to implement the latest developed technology in industry in an effective manner? So what are the main factors to consider when you're implementing the latest developed technology effectively?
Hi, John. So it comes back to a lot of the stuff that I had in my presentation is, one, you've got to make sure you've got a really strong foundation to build from. You've really got to set in and give the skills and the vision to the people that are going to implement that technology. And we see that, you know, when we look at it, it's very easy to see the physical machine and go out and buy that, but then it's very easy to miss the digital interfaces that bring the real benefit to that machine as well. So having those teams working both with the physical installation and operation of it, with the workflows and data architecture systems as well, and getting that all together with the people that actually will take it, use it, and understand it, and getting them to show that they don't have to do things the same way. This will give them something that's better and make them part of it. So I think I use the phrase quite often, you know, it's not doing new technology to people. They should be the people doing the new technology in the business. And I think that's really, really important. So as I showed you, you've got all those different, you know, facets of delivering a sort of digital manufacturing transformation program, and skills is one of those. But if you don't do the skills, everything else will be for nothing. If you don't do the data architecture, everything else will be for nothing. So understanding how all those go together for your business, and every business will be different. You know, they will have different drivers. We are very much a sort of one-off manufacturing facility. You know, 5 frigates is a big multi order for us. So we're not a car factory. We'll have different demands, or a pharmaceutical factory will have different demands. You know, and we've gone out and looked at those businesses, or an Ocado or an Amazon with their warehouses. We've looked at those and bring those in as well. And I think they're really good at implementing technology, because we can take what they do and say, well, we do a lot of warehousing. How do we apply that into our warehousing as well? So, and it's always good to have that sort of other industry cases and then apply it properly in your business.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time. We've got the next keynote that's about to start. Keith, I know you've got a question. Maybe I'll read it out quickly. Neil, if you could give a quick response, that would be great. So Keith is asking, Keith Rushton, how do we start to educate business leaders to make good decisions as we enter a digitally enabled TES future?
Yeah, I touched on this one earlier. To me, it's a lot around sort of data culture, data strategy, and understand that. So there's a lot of people in the business that don't understand all the terminology that gets used or how it gets applied. I don't think the industry helps itself, because we call everything AI. Yeah. And then people think, oh my God, we can't put AI into our system. What's that going to do with our security and everything else? So I don't think the industry helps itself sometimes in terms of the labels and badges it puts on stuff. It's not clear enough. And just trying to debunk that and say, start here and move to here is a really powerful one to take, you know, the leaders on the journey, and then have them, you know, with the skills and understanding that they need. So again, ultimately, they all want better data. They want better systems and a better run business. But you need to be able to explain that to them and get them to understand the terminology we use. So when a business case comes up for this, it's not just put to the side because it's going to take too long to understand, because everyone has a day job and maybe several evening jobs as well in the business.
I think that's great. Thank you, Neil. We're just a bit over the time that was allocated for this session. I think it's been really, really exciting and interesting. I'd like to thank Neil and Michaela again for the insights you've provided. It's obviously a huge challenge how we look at digital skills, how we plan it and deliver it. It's going to be a topic that we're going to be looking into over the next sort of 5, 10, 20 years. It's clearly going to have a huge impact on how we deliver TES. So I think moving forward, it's definitely an area that companies need to look into. And also in parallel, universities need to align to the industrial needs. So I think this session has really been useful and very beneficial for us to look at. Good. So with that, are there any other final comments, questions from anyone? If not, I think the results from the Mentimeter, I'm hoping you've been collating or feeding your responses in the Mentimeter poll. Will be able to share the results during this conference. So thank you all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again to Neil and Michaela as well. So with that, we'll now be moving to the next session. I'm guessing, Pavan, would you like to give any further guidance on that?
Afternoon once again. I think the next session is in the auditorium, so please stay put. Continue the session. We are having 2 keynotes this afternoon, followed by a break, and then we have the panel session. So, John, over to you. Please, could you introduce our keynote speaker and start the session, please? Thank you.
Okay.
Gustavo, are you around? Please, could you do the introductions?
Yeah, I'm live. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Perfect. So, welcome. So, do you want to take a 5 minutes break so that we allow people to break from the last workshop? Let's start on 10 in 4 minutes actually, so that we have a bathroom break and then we can relax and stretch a little our legs. All right. All right. So let's take 5 minutes. At 2:10 we come back.
As Gustavo suggested, we'll take a quick 5-minute break. We'll under 5 minutes. I'm going back to the floor now. We should come back again in 5